Today we're going to make some brioche dough. And a brioche dough is a yeast-raised dough, similar to your regular dinner rolls or something like that that you're familiar with. However, it is a richer dough. It has more butter in the dough and more egg in the dough than your normal yeast bread. The ingredients are flour with just a pinch of salt, maybe another little pinch. How about a little pinch more, right? But we don't want so much salt that we kill the yeast, because that yeast needs to eat the sugar. And when the yeast eats the sugar, it farts out carbon dioxide, and the gluten in here, once it gets developed, traps that carbon dioxide and helps the bread rise. So we have our flour and our salt. And with a regular yeast dough, you use the straight dough mixing method, which is you dump everything in together. Brioche is a little bit different in that we are going to put in our dry ingredients and we're going to moisten them, and I forgot to mention, I'm sorry, I also have a little bit of warm milk. And we're going to put that in there, and it's going to start to come together. And as it starts to come together, we will then begin to add our egg a little bit at a time. Like I said, a regular yeast dough, you dump everything in, you turn it on, you let the machine go, or you knead it by hand. This is going to take a little bit longer. And the other thing that this is going to be that's different than yeast dough is this dough is going to be a little loose and wet, what bakers call shaggy. It'll be a shaggy dough. So let's go ahead and get this started. Brioche is going to take quite a while. Once it's been mixed, I'm going to let it rise or ferment or proof. That'll take an hour or so under optimal, about 100-degree temperature. Well, it's not 100 degrees in my house. It's only about 70 degrees, so it's going to take longer than an hour for this dough to start to rise. Then it's going to sit in the refrigerator overnight so that it can become something that you can actually handle. It's going to be pretty sticky and gooey, and refrigerating overnight, you don't have to, but it makes it easier, a little easier to manipulate and turn into rolls. So we're going to let this come together, and I got a feeling I'm going to have to scrape it down a little bit. And I'm going to use a rubber spatula to get, I don't know if you can see it at this angle, and I can't really move the camera around. I'm here all by myself, right? And it's fairly dense, right? But it's starting to come together. I'm going to give it another couple of spins, and then I'll start to add the egg. And when the egg comes in, it should come together a little bit more like a recognizable dough that you're used to seeing. So I'm going to go ahead and put in a little bit of the egg, maybe about a third of it, and let that work itself in. I'm going to add in, I see it there. Alright, I'm likely going to cut some of this. 2, 1, cut. And then come back in 3, 2, 1. I'm going to add the second third of my eggs. This is starting to come together pretty nice. And I'm likely going to have to stop it in a little bit and scrape this around. I can see down in the bottom of the mixing bowl that some of the egg is down there and it doesn't want to come back up. But I don't know if you can hear it. It sounds sticky. It's going to get that way. It's going to get that way. Let me see if I can get this moving a little bit. Make this machine work. Alright, so let me scrape this a little bit. I have a feeling that if I were making more dough in here than just this little bit, this would be better for the machine. Using this just a little bit of dough at a time, the machine can't always get it moving. I like to see that dough get kind of caught up on the hook a little bit. And it's starting to smack it around some. So if you were doing this by hand, this is the part where you would start to, when you knead dough, you fold it, you bring it back to you, and you press it out, and then you fold it and bring it back to you. But this part with brioche, and I forget the name of it, and I'm sure some baker on the internet will be mad at me. You kind of pick up the dough and slap it on the ground and then smear it with the palm of your hand. And I'm certain that when I was in culinary school, I knew the name of that process for probably about 20 minutes. And then I forgot. But you can see the dough hook doesn't really want to pick this dough up. And I'm afraid that's because we're not actually making enough dough for this machine. I probably should have done this by hand. Alright, so that's our second or third, last third of egg. Let's get all that in there. Frustrating. See, it's all kind of stuck in there. It's begging me to pull this out and do it by hand is what it's doing. And I'm just too lazy for that. I'm too lazy. But now that I've mentioned doing it by hand, I'm probably going to be forced. So I'm going to let this spin for a while, and I'm not going to make you sit here and watch it. I'm going to turn the camera off and go away until this starts to come together, and then when it does, I'm going to come back and we're going to start adding in our butter a piece at a time. So as you can see, I really had to turn this thing way up to get that dough moving around in there. And there we go. It's starting to come together. Now we're getting something. Let's slow that down a little bit so that it'll actually knead the dough and start to develop the gluten. Now, one of the things I do want to mention is we did not use bread flour in this recipe. We used all-purpose flour. The reason being, the bread flour has more gluten, and all this whipping around and beating of this dough would be developing the gluten, and the dough would be so tight that it wouldn't accept the fat that it needs to get, the butter that it needs to get. So by using a lower gluten flour, all-purpose, we can mix it the way it needs to be mixed without over-developing the gluten. If you develop too much gluten, your rolls will be tough. And I know that seems crazy that you can have tough bread, but you can. So I'm going to let this go for a few minutes. That ball that's bouncing around in there, I'd like to see that get caught up. It looks like it's trying to, and there it goes. Come on, come on, come on. Ah, it came back out. No, it's back. All right, we're going to give this a couple more minutes, and I'll come back to you. It's starting to look pretty good. Actually, you know what? We may be there. We may be there. All right. I'm okay with it. So I'm going to put in a pat of butter. And this is where this dough is going to really get shaggy. And you're going to have to scrape and cut this butter in because it takes a while for it to get in there. but it definitely needs to be at room temperature when you start to do this. And there, I missed. Don't ever do what I just did. So, as you can see, the butter is going in. It's going in slowly. Remember that beurre blanc we made a couple weeks back when we had to put the butter cubes in one at a time when they were cold? Well, now we got to do that same thing. Be patient, except our butter's warm. So I'm going to keep doing this. I'll come back to you when it's done. See if I can get you a good picture in there. Right? This is going to happen for another 10 minutes or so. So, we'll be back. So, I'm down to my last couple pads of butter. You can see the dough has gotten smooth, but sticky a little bit. It definitely is shiny and looking wet. So I'm going to get these last couple pieces of butter mixed in there, and then I'm going to put it in another bowl and find the warmest spot in my house that I can, which is upstairs in a bedroom where the sun comes in the window, and I'm going to put this dough on that bed in the sun because I'm looking for a temperature that's as close to 100 degrees as I can get. If you have an oven on, you know, you could put it on top of the oven, but don't put it in the oven unless your oven can stay at about 100 degrees. So find the warmest spot in your house and put it there until it doubles in size. So I'm going to let this go for another minute. And when it's done mixing, I'll come back to you. So our dough is coming together now. You look down in there. The butter is all incorporated. Sorry, I forgot I had that water running. The butter is all incorporated. It's not lumpy anymore. It's smooth. It looks sort of elasticy and kind of sticky. Let me turn this off and scrape down the dough hook, and you can see that it's running off of the dough hook. It looks like slime from Nickelodeon, except it's not green. There, and it comes off pretty easily, but this is what I mean by shaggy. It's kind of wet and sticky. A little bit of elastic, right? It's like big boogers. Not that I know what a booger on my finger looks like, but I know you do, you booger eater. So I'm going to put this in the bowl. I'm going to use my spatula to get it out of the mixing bowl. I could leave it in the mixing bowl, but I want to clean it. And look at that. It's so rich and gooey. It's sticking together. This is a good sign. Good sign that this dough is going to turn out pretty good. I'm looking forward to it. Brioche is a nice thing to eat. If you ever get a chance to make it, I suggest you do. It's really not too hard. So there. Oh, there's a little bit of butter that didn't get mixed in. Let me chop that in there a little bit. All right. So now I'm going to set this. I'm going to cover it with plastic and set it in a warm space in my house. And when it doubles in size, if it doubles in size, I'll come back and show you. I'm hoping that I can get it warm enough to double up in size. But it may take an hour or two before that happens. So I'll come back then. 3, 2, 1, bye-bye.